This is widely considered the most terrifying scene in horror history. Not the spinning head or the green vomit, but this, the cerebral angiography. When The Exorcist hit theaters in 1973, some audience members actually fainted, others fled the theater. But there's a secret hidden in this frame that is far darker than any demon. The director Billy Friedkin, he was obsessed with realism. In The Exorcist, Father Dyer is played by William O'Malley, a real-life Jesuit priest. And the X-ray technician, the director didn't want actors fumbling with medical equipment. He wanted the real thing. So he went to NYU Medical Center and he hired a real technician. His name was Paul Bateson. He was a respected radiographer. His colleagues called him the best. Friedkin said that he had heavy, calm hands, and that's why he cast him. A few years later, after this scene was filmed, police would discover that the man standing calmly next to Linda Blair was a monster hiding in plain sight. This is the story of the Cameo Killer. To understand Paul Bateson, you have to understand the two worlds that he lived in. During the day, he was a man of science. He worked at the prestigious NYU Medical Center. He was a neurological radiology technician, a job that requires immense precision because if you're injecting contrast dye into the arteries of the human brain, one slip and the patient dies. Bateson never slipped up. He was so good that Dr. Barton Lane, a radiologist who worked with him and who also appears in the movie, later said that I considered him to be a good friend and he taught me an awful lot. But when his shift ended, Bateson took off the white coat and he stepped out of the hospital into the shadow of Greenwich Village. It was the mid-1970s and Bateson was a heavy drinker, which was a habit that he picked up when he was in the Army. As the years passed, the alcohol had taken over. He started missing shifts. His hands, his famous steady hands, they began to shake. And by 1977, the best technician at NYU was fired. The tether that held him to society was cut, and Paul Bateson began to drift. September 14th, 1977, Addison Verrill was a 36-year-old film journalist for Variety. He was smart, successful, and a fixture in the New York art scene. That night, Verrill was at a club called Badlands on Christopher Street. He met a man, they drank. As the sun began to come up, they went back to Verrill's apartment on Horatio Street. It was supposed to be a casual encounter, but something went wrong. Bateson later confessed that he felt dismissed. Verrill wanted him to leave. Bateson wanted to stay. The rejection triggered what he called a flare-up in his brain. He walked into the kitchen, he picked up a heavy cast iron skillet, he walked back into the living room and he struck Verrill in the skull. But he didn't stop there. He returned to the kitchen, he found a knife and he stabbed Verrill in the chest. He stole $57 and a credit card, leaving the man he had just slept with dead on the floor. Police initially wrote it off as robbery gone wrong. They assumed a break-in. But Arthur Bell, a legendary columnist for the Village Voice, he knew better. He wrote a blistering article titled, "There's Nothing Gay About Murder," arguing that Verrill had invited his killer inside. 8 days later, Arthur Bell's phone rang. The caller, who identified himself only as Mitch, said that he wanted to set the record straight. He wasn't a monster, he insisted. He was just a person who made a mistake. To prove he was the killer, he told Bell about the frying pan. He told him about the Crisco oil all over the floor, details that only the police would know. So Bell calls the cops, and they trace Mitch to Paul Bateson. When they arrested him, Bateson was drunk in his apartment, and legend has it that he looked at the officers and he asked, "How's the movie doing?" The Exorcist was still playing in theaters at the time of his arrest. Bateson was convicted for the murder of Addison Verrill. That case is closed. But there's another file, the Cuppy file. Between 1975 and 1977, the dismembered remains of 6 unidentified men were pulled from the Hudson River. They had been cut up with surgical precision, wrapped in black plastic bags, and dumped into the water. Police and prosecutors suspected Bateson. Why? Because the cuts were too clean. The coroner had said that the killer had to be a butcher or a medical technician. Billy Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, he visited Bateson in prison. In his memoir, Friedkin claims that the police told him the body parts were found in bags stamped with NYU Medical Center. He claims Bateson all but confessed to him. But here's where the story gets murky. Investigative journalists have combed through all of the court records, and there is no mention of the NYU stamped bags in the official police files. That might be a Hollywood embellishment, a director making the story better. And look at the facts. The Verrill murder was sloppy, a frying pan, a crime of passion, a confession. The Bag murders were cold, calculated. Dismemberment, no identity. Was Paul Bateson a serial killer? Or did the police just need a convenient villain to close 6 unsolved cases? To this day, the Bag murders remain officially unsolved. Whether he killed 6 men or 1, Paul Bateson's story didn't end in prison. He went right back to Hollywood. Billy Friedkin took the story of the Bag murders and he turned it into a controversial film, Cruising, starring Al Pacino. The movie sparked massive protests in New York. The gay community felt that it demonized them, turning their lives into a slasher flick. It's a dark irony because the community was protesting a movie inspired by the very man who had preyed upon them. Decades later, Bateson returned to the screen again as a character in Netflix's Mindhunter. Once again, he is the enigma, the calm, articulate man who denies he is a monster. Paul Bateson died in 2012, an anonymous free man after his parole, but he lives on in that one scene. So the next time you watch The Exorcist and you see that needle go in, remember that the horror isn't the special effects. It isn't the demon, it's the heavy, calm hands of a killer right there in frame.